Giorgio, welcome to the podcast.
Joey, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. Well, I'm going to kick it off with a question that I ask most guests, and it's: at what point did you know you were going to be, let's call it, a major business leader, and just where were you at in life at that stage?
Yeah, that sort of decision was never really made, and things have just happened over the years. But there was always an ambition to make a difference in the marketplace and add value. But my journey to where I am now versus where I started wasn't designed. It was a journey of different opportunities that presented themselves
That got you there.
Yeah.
And so, when were you in your first leadership role then?
My first. I worked in education initially, and I worked in both further education and higher education. So one of my first roles was leading a team of examiners in education in the colleges, and I was the youngest exams officer in the country at the time.
Oh, right.
But from there, I moved into higher education, and at the University of Nottingham, I started to get into technology, and I worked at the faculty of medicine, and we were transitioning those students from paper-based exams to online.
Got you.
So that's where I started to cut my teeth, and I was seconded into a project to take the university from 90 different systems into one, and that's when I met Oracle and a team called Cyber there. So I started to cut my teeth with Lean Six Sigma and process design and mapping, functional and non-functional requirements, and I got a flavour for it. And then I was headhunted by an organisation that was involved in reverse supply chain logistics, and that's how it started with John Pye. I was there for nearly 4 years, and we took a family business where it was at the time to multi-site locations, and then I transferred to B.Stock Solutions. They approached me.
When you were at John Pye, what was the role that you were recruited into?
It was new business.
New business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it IC? Was it individual contributor, or were you managing a team?
I was managing. Yeah, we built a team. So I built a team, managed a team, and that involved the marketing, the new sales, all the go-to-market, and the solution design. Really, at that time, and it was pretty. From where the market was, it was about getting into enterprise brands versus provincial and liquidations. It was moving to actually building solutions, so building out a layer of resource and headhunting and bringing people in and training people as well. So I already started to, I'd say, cut my teeth in a leadership role.
Yeah.
When after that period of time, obviously B.Stock had noticed what was happening, and we were onboarding enterprise brands that they wanted to partner with as well in a different capacity. And that journey for myself back in 2018 was where I really started to understand technology at scale and working globally as well. So you've gone from a UK domestic market into, EMEA, which is what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, we continued to build out that business.
Interesting.
But my very first, I'd say leadership role was there. It was there at John Pye.
Was it? And what year did you join them?
I joined John Pye in 2015.
2015.
Yeah, 2015.
Just because I know there's been that whole COVID era, there's been Brexit, so good to kind of know maybe what the economy might have been like at that time.
Yeah, the adoption obviously and growth of e-com was happening. Right? It was already happening, and when I went into B.Stock, it was a new concept in Europe. Really B2B private marketplaces, controlling supply and demand, controlling the movement of goods through for a network of approved buyers. That was a new concept. So when COVID did hit, the fact we built this online marketplace meant we could continue to operate with all our partners, whereas physical bricks and mortar e-commerce solutions, they couldn't. So we scaled quickly because we were needed. And again, there were enterprise brands, I won't name them, but enterprise brands with just ridiculous amounts of inventory because their physical stores had been closed, right? They couldn't operate. So even though online was literally the only way you could get something at that time, we had a solution that they needed. So that was fast growth and really being able to be agile enough to help them solve those problems they were facing. At the time. Yeah.
And when you were at John Pye, you said you built a team from scratch.
Yeah, I was literally I was the second BD person in there. Yeah,
right.
And again, there was I'd say under 100 people at the time in the business. You know, when I left, there was probably 600 people in there.
Wow.
Yeah, and it went from 2 or 3 facilities up to 25 in that period of time. So it was that 3.5, 4 years was fast.
Yeah,
that was fast growth.
That's mega scale. Yeah,
but the infrastructure we put in place
was all in the UK.
That was UK. That was UK. Wow. Yeah, and when I'd left, they were just in the process of acquiring, looking at a facility in Europe, in Spain, and they did complete that later. But for myself, watching that growth from a Nottingham headquarter to multiple sites, you know, across the UK, it was a great journey because you're taking your clients with you as well on that change. And obviously, you know, working with, you know, again, one of the biggest marketplaces, you know, on the planet, you know, that was a game changer for the business. You know, it was what scaled the retail side of it. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah. Interesting. And how big was your team by the time?
By the time I left, there was 20 people in that team.
20 people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what, I guess, you cut your teeth on like employing and managing examiners from the education side, but then salespeople is probably way different.
Sales and marketing is totally different. Yeah, because again, you're trying to sustain a demand, you know, demand for the services we're providing, and taking people through that journey, and probably more so, I understood how to map processes and solutions, but actually show them this is how we take you through that journey.
Yeah.
At B-Stock, what was good for my own learning was that was a pure play technology company.
Nice.
So you've gone from the UK to they're HQ'd in Belmont in San Francisco, and our product dev team were based in Belmont, and you're working with the onboarding customer services group there, and it was just it was totally different. But going from having built a big team, you know, and having resource to not necessarily a startup, B-Stock was very established in the US. But we were myself and a very good friend of mine and previous colleague, Ben Whitaker. Yeah, you know, we built that business out, you know, and it was just a fast-paced startup sort of life, you know. Yeah,
interesting. And like we're getting to 20 heads. Was it quite an aggressive hiring strategy? And like and some people aren't, you know, proud to admit it, but like with getting to 20 in a fairly short period of time, like there's an element of, you know, you have got to hire quite a few, and if some don't work out, you know, or was it you were, you know, nailing it?
There was, I would say, so there was a blend. The strategy was a blend of promoting within and finding, you know, talent within the business that we could adopt. And so we moved certain individuals from different departments and we bring them in because they would have a background and understanding of how things worked.
Yeah.
Externals always a challenge because they've got to have a cultural fit, particularly with a family business versus enterprise. So that was really important, and I'd say we got 99% of it right. You know, we did, but we brought expertise from outside in as well to continue to layer it up and add value. But the way B-Stock would recruit was very, very thorough. You know, you'd go through 10 interviews with different stakeholders in the organization to make sure you were a fit.
Really?
Culturally, it was
quite heavy.
It was heavy and it was lengthy. You know, that onboarding takes time, but it was critical. They got the right people in.
Yeah. And do you which would you say you'd prefer? Do you feel like ultra diligence, meet lots of people, or would you say, you know?
Yeah. I think from experience and having been around a bit now, you know, network referrals are always the best because you've got confidence in that there's a catalogue of history behind that person of what they've delivered. Plus, you know, they're linked to someone that you're linked to as well. So that's like a comfort blanket against it. It's not always the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I would say a more robust review of who that person is better. Yeah. Versus a quick, right, that person stacks up, let's get them in, let's see what happens. That's costly, it's risky, and it can disrupt your momentum of where you're going. So I personally have always avoided that when I'm building teams over the years. And when I went back briefly to John Pye for a while to help the team, you know, it was very much where are they current state? let's redeploy some people into different areas.
Yeah.
And as we bring new people in, they've got to fit that culture of the business.
Got
so,
you.
That's how I would do it.
Yeah. I don't often talk about hiring, to be honest, but I think it feeds into being a good leader and, your approach and stuff. Like, what sort of boss would you say you were if we were to do a survey on everyone you've hired?
No, I think again, I reckon you'd get good
feedback.
I'd get a good MP. Yeah, I get a good MPS promoter score, definitely. No, I think with the teams, I've ensured that they're empowered, right? So I'm not a micromanager, and I don't hover over their workflows. That they're empowered and I trust them, but they're accountable for their deliverables.
Yeah.
But making sure it's always been a team. It's a team ethos. And that's when you're running a business, it's the same, right? You've got other business partners like I have now, and we're all together with the same mission. But it's transparency is key. If they've got a problem, I would hope if you spoke to someone that worked for me, they felt comfortable that they could talk to me about things, and we would go through it. But I was very much around, do you have the tools you need to deliver your objectives? If you don't, let's go and find them. And if you do, then we need to work together to hit those results. And the targets it was always about where we needed to go as together. But that's the way I've always directed and managed, and shared goal. This is your responsibility. You're the owner of that. We work together. That's always been my leadership approach.
Nice. You might get a few comments.
There'll be a few. There might be a few. Yeah,
from the past. But, okay, but very cool. And so, John Pye, B-Stock. What were those businesses turning over by the time you left?
Yeah, I can't tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah, but there was significant. What I can say is significant growth in both businesses when I left.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And then, what was the next?
So the next step, I'm a shareholder of B-Stock, and for the period of time when I was vested, there was a crossroad of staying in again for a longer period of time and earning more equity, or actually going to do something else. And whilst I was at B-Stock, we needed a binding shipping partner to move freight for an account we were managing in the UK and in Europe. And I met Dave. That's when I met Dave Emerson, who was at Seco, who was one of the founders of the international business, and we hit it off straight away. We designed products for reverse logistics that still run to this day, right? So we connected, and he persuaded me to make the step and go into like full blown e-com and freight forwarding and contract logistics, and that was it was risky for me because I'd been involved in e-commerce, the secondary market, for so long.
Yeah.
But actually, at the time, it was like, this is probably something I need to do to stretch myself and learn more about the whole supply chain network. So it was like going back to school in a very quick time.
Yeah.
And information is insane, trying to absorb everything and the changes, but probably the best decision I ever made in my career, because it's given me a full 360 view of supply chain and reverse logistics. And having worked in the sector for over nearly 11 years now, there aren't many people that have done that.
They've had that exposure.
They haven't got that exposure. So you can fully empathize with a CEO, a CFO, a COO, around the challenges they're facing, because you've been on both ends of that journey with them. And it was a great experience. And but whilst I was there at Seco, we started to have the idea around BackTech, and what BackTech would become, with my other founders. And that was always planned. It was something we wanted to address in the market. But Seco was great because, again, it was plugging back into a global international network I'd developed at B-Stock. So it wasn't like he was starting from scratch. It was like, right, we can add value and help you expand into new international markets. So there was synergy.
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy decision to leave B-Stock because I was fully invested in that, and it was a fantastic company with, like John Pye, just really great culture. And I burnt no bridges with any of the organizations. We've always remained in contact, and there's always opportunities to partner. But Seco was very much a stepping stone into where I am now with BackTech.
Yeah, got you. And when you touched on the re-commerce and e-commerce, like, given you spent quite a bit of time in re-commerce, like, what would you say the big shift or difference that you had to adjust to, or what was the big learning piece you got from sort of going from that secondary market to?
Yeah, I'd say the speed of e-commerce, the speed is different to reverse as well.
Right.
So very much, it's a faster pace when you add in the elements of cross-border as well, and building new lanes internationally.
Yeah.
Just the volumes are significant. But within the reverse, it is very much, it's a consolidated process in that you've got to manage that inventory in one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether it's at the destination or back at the origin. So that was one of the core differences, was just the sheer pace of it. Everything, all those different modes of transportation, all things that I'd not been really involved in, other than from a recom, you're down at the road freight element and the warehouse element. All of a sudden, you drop in ocean, air, train, everything, and it's just a different.
Gets busy.
It's a
quick,
totally different world. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and then you mentioned Back.Tech, which is what you currently mainly engaged in. So do you want to give us just a bit of an insight to what it is you guys are doing? From going, winding back from the John Pye days through to BStock, and just looking at the sector and what's been happening, and the growth of e-commerce, particularly that particular area of reverse logistics and the secondary market, and consumer returns really hasn't changed. So there's been new amazing solutions that have been built that improve the return process through return portals, so users get a better experience. But the actual fundamental problem at the reverse end hasn't changed. Right? Yeah. So when I was at Seeker and I dived back out for a brief period with John Pye, I was shocked because I'd been away for a while. Yeah, I came back and it was the same. Right. Nothing had really changed from an actual, say, value proposition or product. The liquidation element and recom element, and let's say those secondary market spaces, have not really changed for the brands and the retailers. They still had this problem. Mm-hmm. So BackTech was really born about, how do you take that sort of time and cost out of the supply chain network? How do you improve that? Yeah. And it starts further upstream, right? Further upstream with a customer, right? With a consumer. Yeah. So that's where the idea was born, right? It was born of, can we take that journey out of the warehouse through unnecessary middle mile legs? Yeah. Where product has to then go back to a warehouse and then human error, no standardization, all those types of things. So the idea was, well, if we can improve the grading further upstream, we can design a better outcome further downstream. Nice. And take out significant operational costs for our clients. So that was the idea. Yeah. That's always the idea. And then you've got to go and build a product to do that. And then obviously my other founders, Mark Rose, Dean Townsend, and Darren, they're like, they've built this fantastic solution that we're getting to market. And we're early stage, obviously, but what we do know, the adoption is going to be quick, because at a very simple base level, everything that's a return product should not all go back to the same warehouse. Yeah. It just doesn't, when you even say it, it doesn't make sense. So certain grades of products need to go somewhere else. Got you. Right. And that's what we're addressing. But fundamentally, at the back end of that, when you look at the growth of eBay Live and Tilt and whatnot and TikTok live reselling, there isn't just like your traditional auction liquidation methods anymore. Yeah. And resale. There's a whole new way of doing it. And being able to add value in both those stages means you're taking a lot of cost out for those brands and retailers. So it's really, really smart, with regards to what it will do. How long did it take to build the product and the solution? Yeah, I'd say from concept to build, it's been at least 18 months from a build perspective. Yeah. And then from onboarding, we're into 24 months now, and we're onboarding new clients. And that's pretty much, we're ready to, from a, is that fast or is it slow? I think from my perspective, when I was at BStock, if you compare something that's come out of, say, out of the Bay Area, and that was a company that was born out of eBay as well. Oh, right. I think we're fast in comparison, and probably what's happened in the last year or so,
is the adoption of the AI tools that are now available. So that it's just a enabler to speed up and do things quicker. And that, even just watching how we're onboarding clients, having worked with carriers directly before in the past, and if you ask anyone in this space, like when you get to integrations, everyone's like,
big sigh, big deep breath.
Because there's technicalities to it. It can take time, there's complexity. AI is like just leveling it down and making it so much quicker. So regardless of what platform a brand is on or what return portal they're using,
should be able to integrate.
We can connect with them like really quickly.
Nice.
So that's probably the biggest step change I've seen versus developing the product, has been the speed you can make change is increased.
Yeah. To be fair, like it put me back a bit, just because I've seen returns companies, I've understood carriers, freight forwarders and stuff like that, but the actual tech and the solution is pretty slick, and and that's not me doing a big plug or anything. It's just, it did take me back, because you see it. Wind it back 10, 12 years ago, there was loads of innovation, and then all the big boys bought them out, and you just got swallowed up. But then it seems now there's a bit more innovation going on.
I totally agree with you. And I was with a client this morning, I mentioned to you before, and just watching their faces, as you're going through it, and you can see the realization of, this is transform, this is going to transform what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's disruptive, right? It is disruptive because it's going to add value quickly, but getting them through that journey to say, we actually now understand our true cost of returns because you've just shown us.
Yeah.
The second you've shown us a better way of managing it afterwards is a great, I'm very excited about this, and I've been around a bit, and I've seen lots of different tech stacks and different solutions. And again, I'm not saying it. This one is, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, and to make it a visual picture on because I know there's an element of the solution, and when you say solution in logistics, it's like, it's almost like network and being able to get products from A to B. But like on the front end and the tech side, could you just paint the picture of like what someone might do if they need to return an item, and how you guys might be different to
and I'll answer that, but it's a tech product, right? Back is fully tech. We're totally agnostic to the carrier selections and the return portal providers as well. But it is a tech solution. But as an adoption, because it can be white labeled, it can be integrated with return portals as well. But a user that's going to process a return, you go on like you would with any return portal. You select the product, you allocate your order number, your postcode.
Yeah.
And this is where it sort of changes, is once you start to go into that existing UX of, I want a refund, I'd like a store credit, I'd like an exchange. You can choose those products you don't want. And where it really kicks in is right now, it guides you through, take a few photos live within the app versus you have to upload a photo. So from a loss prevention and fraud prevention perspective, we're addressing a tier of activity that can't happen through that solution, because you have to upload it live. And we can guide the consumer through how the brand and the retailer wants to do it. So it's their ruling, it's their decision making. But once that consumer goes through it, it's very quick. They take those photos based on the guidance for the grading. But then the engine kicks in, right? And the blueprint of the engine is what's really clever and what we've built. So without revealing too much, we're creating the savings there, because we've captured a layer of data right there that would normally take weeks downstream in a warehouse for someone to then open, check it,
make some sort of processing decision.
And that's the fundamental part of it. And from a use case perspective, it isn't just with the consumer. It can be used in store. It can be used in the warehouse as well, because the AI algorithms are just getting better every time they look at an image. But the dynamic routing is key to this, right? That's what we've put together. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It seems like a really obvious solution. Yeah. Like when you go and just physically return an item, and the person serving you is looking at the item and checking it out for, it just, it seems like a really obvious solution for some reason.
I agree with you. And that's what sort of surprised me is when you look at the return, and there's been like huge advancement in those return solution providers and making the user experience better. They've missed that part of it still, in that there's still a value you can add further upstream there, because you can then support what happens downstream better.
Yeah,
that was always the gap, and that's where we see how the solution works. It's a product, it's an end-to-end product, but it can bolt in there and it can bolt in at the end as well.
And so could you sell this to a logistics company who may want to adapt their return solution? And then also, could you sell direct to a brand who just wants to adopt it as part of their return solution?
100%. Yeah. Oh, and we've always, our methodology has been a one-to-many approach. So we want to work with both the tech providers that are there with the return products now, because they have obviously significant volumes in play, but also from a 3PL and from a contract logistics perspective as well, they will benefit from this because they can resell it to their clients. So we're looking at all angles on that, and the direct to brand is also totally what we're doing as well. It's going to add value quickly in both of those work streams. Yeah,
got you. That'd be quite coincidental if like a brand was already using it and then a carrier was saying, "Hey, we've got this," and it was like, because it's white label.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, it looks really similar to ours," but I guess they just would stick to.
Yeah. And again, we're looking at our partnership framework and network is how this is going to work. It's where we're going to add value quicker to the market. What I would say is obviously the US probably a bit quicker in the way they adopt new technologies. And want to test it and move it. Whereas in the UK and Europe, probably a far more cautious methodology to say, right, let's belt and braces, check everything before we adopt the change. But we're seeing that early stages and we're familiar with how it works. So
got you. And I know you mentioned it's likely going to save operational efficiencies for either a carrier when they're processing it through the warehouse or the brand if they've got their own. Could you give us like an example of some of the things where you've seen it sort of save time, efficiencies, maybe cost of what that's like?
Definitely. Yeah. So even at a simple, if I use a category like cosmetics, for example, cosmetics, if that product's been opened at all, it's unsellable. Right, it's unsellable.
Yeah.
If it's still brand new in the original packaging, that can go back to pick, and you can retain value from that product. But by default, current state, every cosmetic return is going to go to a warehouse, the same warehouse, and be processed and then segmented out. So if you were just to make that change to say, when the consumer creates the return request and it's damaged or opened,
instantly.
Instantly where it's going.
Yeah.
And that's a change straight away, and that's a cost saving straight away as well, because not only from an operational process downstream, you can change the carrier selection. It doesn't need to be an expensive or an express return. It can go on a slower, cheaper service, for example, if it's a different grade of product. So you've got efficiency straight out the gate. When we've been building and seeing true cost of returns, just by making those subtle changes on grade instantly, that instantly creates savings. And it's, you talk back through it and it's like, why isn't anyone else
doing it?
Done this before?
I know, it seems
so obvious
solution.
Yeah.
Well, when you get to the level of Apple and, just remember me.
Yeah, no, it'd be nice. Of course we will, Joe. No, we're excited about it. And again, it's addressing those fundamental pain points that have existed for many years and years, and they've not been fixed.
Well, give us a bit of an idea. What have the challenges been to building the product and getting it to market? What would you say some of the challenges have been for you?
I think again, because it's new. Because it's new and it's a different way. Particularly for when you think of your brand equity, UX is everything. The user experience has to be spot on. You don't want to risk that or create an impact. So from the early stage conversations, you're finding a way of saying, look, we can pivot in with your existing solution, but the grading is going to take place just like it would in their own return portal.
Yeah.
They see that as a white label solution. But obviously the risk of an established brand of just going in and making a wholesale change with a new product is is always, is always considered. So they're I wouldn't say challenges, they're considerations that our prospects and clients are taking now, because they want to work through, show me the proof, right? Show me the value. So that adoption, and again, I won't go into the commercials of it, but there's a shared benefit for both parties when it works. Right. So that is sort of it's been the next stage of the conversation, because we are so early. And again, making sure integrations work and getting the webhooks connected and just technical pieces, they're done like I was saying before, they're done instantly, like they're done so quickly. Whereas you'd have a product roadmap and a dev queue, and these things would sit there for weeks and months. Now it's like it's done, like straight away. It's done.
How long would an integration take now?
I mean, if you're on a Shopify marketplace, for example, it's 15 minutes. It's done. Right, it's that quick. It's
really?
Like, it's connect.
Oh, right.
Our team connects it at the back, and it's
a plug and play.
It's a plug and play. It's It's very, very quick. The account is set up, and then we've got other integrations with other ERPs systems where if you're on Limworks, for example, or something else, again, the integration's been built. So the adoption is very much, every brand will have a different return portal. They'll have a different warehouse management system. So it's just connecting all those workflows together. But from what we're seeing, it's really quick, right? It's fast.
Got you. Yeah. And that's like, that even if you had your own custom built WMS system, it plugs into that in the same sort of fashion as
it's base level information. So you've got SKU level, like product level data that you need to connect to, and then you need to be able to bounce into the consumer journey. And if it was done, let's say it wasn't adopted with the consumer and it was done in a physical store, it's the same thing. You're getting that order level data, you're guiding the operative through the grading. No different if it was done at the bench as well, exactly. At the warehouse bench, the same. Yeah.
And this is, domestic and international sort of proof. You could put this through cross-border, international.
It's been built as a global product.
Right.
Yeah. So cross-border was very much in mind when we were thinking about it. And when we get to the e-commerce element of it, there's areas we're really focused on to improve the process and speed it up as well. But it's very much built on that design, is that we want to tackle domestic and international returns through the solution.
Where would you be able to speed it up?
Where?
Yeah.
So again, if you're a cross-border, if you have cross-border traffic and you have graded returns in a certain lane, does it make sense that inventory actually comes back to its origin DC?
Got you.
Or is it resold at the destination far quicker? So that again is a build. It's a network build to say, if products go into, let's say, ex-UK into Australia, and the average order value is very low, does it make sense that you pay for all that freight to bring it back? No. Does it make more sense to sell it in the destination? Yeah. And again, it's all led by data-led decisions, because we can blueprint based on product value, on condition, and what should happen to it. So that's transformative. It's disruptive. That isn't being done at the moment by anyone.
Yeah. And you mentioned data. So looking at like ESPR and sort of product origin and stuff like that, how has that developed over the last 10 years?
Yeah, we've been focused on a few things. Like sustainability is very much part of it, because just adopting our product means we can evidence and show data based on your carbon reduction. Right?
Okay.
And that's key. It's critical. With ESPR legislation that's coming into play, for enterprise brands, they're going to have to report on this, right? They're going to have to report on what happens to that final destination of the product. The legislation is coming into play. It's going to be adopted, and you've got the use of the digital product passport as well, which is critical. You have to tie those things together. So we've purposely future-proofed the products to be able to support our clients with those requirements by putting the data layers in.
Just in case someone's been getting lost with ESPR, data origin, all that sort of stuff, like what is it in very
in layman terms? So in layman terms, it's any retailer, any brand, they are responsible for reporting on the origin of that product, right through to where it ends up. What that means is if they buy, let's say they buy 100 t-shirts and they sell 20 of them,
Yeah.
What happens with the other 20? Like, where are they? What happened to them? So from a data perspective, that needs to be recorded.
Got you.
It needs to be recorded. So with returns as well, returns, when products go into the return cycle, data can get messy, right? Because an ERP or a warehouse management system may not be configured for return data coming back in. It gets lost. So ESPR is to address that, as in brands can't go and just liquidate or recycle product without having evidence that they've done it. And that's what ESPR is going to be.
There's that sort of accountability factor.
It's the accountability, and it's the impact on the environment, right? You know, there's a huge push to reduce the impact on the planet, and this is part of it, right? ESPR is designed to do that, to make sure product isn't going into the wrong channels, isn't being destroyed, and going into markets where there's no accountability, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I've got you. Okay. And then so looking at, has there been any good case studies or user case studies that you've said, here's a really good example as to how this has worked?
I'd say across our categories, some of our key case studies have been across the, obviously clothing, apparel, and footwear was in mind. And again, footwear constitutes a significant part of returns. Grade A products from a footwear perspective is a lower proportion versus graded. So from a use case, we've got a partner now, I can't name them, but they're live. But that's been great to see, physically see the products going through the solution, being purchased, being graded because they may be the wrong size or there's some form of defect on it. But then actually watching that product go through the journey and create savings for our brand. Not creating a bad experience for the user, but then showing, right, we know exactly where that's going to go. Further downstream. That's been great. And then I'd say one of the categories that took us not by surprise, but the demand is very hot is on home and living and big 2-man lift products, because freight alone is very expensive. Just moving that product around is costly. So being able to help brands provide a better customer experience to those users, to say, look, if it has a slight defect, they can build, I'd say, rules and decision making that they couldn't do before. Which means you bought that lovely chair and it has a mark on the leg. If I give you a slight refund, are you happy to keep it, or do you want a full refund and you want a brand new one, for example? Those sort of decisions couldn't be made until that's back in the warehouse. Right? Because someone physically's got to look at it. So we found that as a use case, is that they can make decisions far earlier than they would do with the current state. But that category, I'd say, it's just something we realized there's huge demand in that category as well as everything else. We're not going into consumer electronics really at the moment. It's an area we've not. It's not that we're not doing it now, but we see a quicker adoption.
Is that just down to being able to read the product and issues?
Testing? And that ITAD space it's a different user experience. It's a different journey, and there are organizations that will do different screening versus consumer-led grading. So it's just a different sector, different commercial model as well.
Interesting.
But I think with the categories, it's the bulk of the volume as well. Luxury is really interesting because of the fraud and counterfeit products that come back into reverse lanes. So we're focused on building return solutions there, where we can help the brands identify products with the correct codes, with the authenticity. And there's products in the market already that do this, but again, from a brand perspective, they can't address it until it's back in the warehouse. It's too late. It's already happened.
They're almost getting the head start, having images come through. And interesting. Who's held accountable for the accountability side of the ESPR bit? Is that on the brand? Albeit,
it's on the brand and the retailer. Our solution will help them address that. Because they'll be able to plug into data very easily versus them trying to consolidate all of that information together. And it's no different to why we built Back. It's because understanding your true cost of returns is not straightforward. And everyone we speak to, if you say, what's the real cost of your returns, they'll say, oh, it's £6 or, £8 or something,
Yeah.
assuming there's a label and a process fee. But when you start to add in CS tickets and refund requests and middle mile legs and consolidation, once you start adding all those costs together, that £6, £7, £8 looks very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's closer to £15, £20. Yeah.
Got it. Has there ever been a case where you've gone in and someone's completely got it way off in that respect? Like how much off? Because can you work out, no doubt through rough calculation, but like just how much that might add up to across the volume of stuff, of those sorts of things going wrong?
Totally. I mean, I think from the journey we've had to date, the realization of how much this is costing and how much time, when they see those numbers both on a sort of monthly, annual basis, it's huge, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking more than 35% of the annual revenues are attributed.
Really?
Yeah, it's that big. And when you get into fashion, return rates are higher.
Yeah.
Right, they're far higher. So it's huge, right? It's a huge cost to doing business. And let's say retailers understand their numbers, right? They know their numbers, but on that side, it's not straightforward because it's hidden across different cost centers.
Yeah. And is it in the 10,000s, hundreds of thousands? If you were to, give one example.
Yeah, I think I'd say an organization doing a couple of 100,000 orders, a month.
Yeah.
We're talking millions of pounds.
Really?
Yeah. So millions of pounds in cost, and by adopting our products, we can show millions of pounds of savings.
Yeah.
Per annum, and that's the level of it. We're talking significant costs, and that journey of showing them that true cost has been like everyone's just gone, because we're using their data.
Yeah.
We're not manufacturing those numbers.
Yeah.
We're just using a calculator to show them those costs.
Yeah.
And then they literally take it away and go through all of those costs, those components together through our solution, and realize, well, actually, if we toggle on these features and just change the label for a graded product versus everything going back to the warehouse, that's an instant win.
So do you feel like it can almost save this race to the bottom when it comes to retail e-com? Because everyone sort of sees it as margins are really tight. Everyone's trying to get lower costs, to some degree.
This is revenue protection, 100%. And we're, what our forecast, and we're looking from an EBITDA perspective, your impact could be 1% to 3% overall just by making it, and that's significant.
Yeah.
That's huge, right? That's an organization's health, like year on year going forward, to enable growth. So we're looking at it at that level, right? We're looking at that sustainability angle of you can continue to grow because you've got a good reverse product in place to manage. It's scalable.
Yeah.
Versus what happens with, I've seen it so many times with brands that start up and scale quickly. They blitz the outbound. Everything's nice and clean and working, and at the back end, it's like, well, what do we do here? And and then there's a cost. Yeah. And that cost does catch up, you know. And
it starts as just a bit of a messy corner in the warehouse, and then
it's truckloads.
It's
truckloads of inventory, and that's costly. It's warehouse space, and it does surprise me now that I won't name them, but there are brands that they'll lease additional warehouse space just to store returns, which are never going to go through their primary channels. So if they adopted a product like Back, it's that speed and time, that velocity. It's the money's worth more now than it is in 2-3 months time.
If a brand is already using, let's say, like a Zigzag or a Rebound, is there room for you guys to still work with them?
100%. Yeah, and I mentioned that earlier, is that from brands that have really good UX around returns, we very much pivot into that point of once the return request's been initiated, the grading can take place.
Got you.
From a user perspective, it's seamless. It's still a brand, it's still that brand, although it's powered by a Zigzag, a Rebound, a Loop, a Swap.
Yes.
But we pivot in to help there, and then because we're carrier agnostic. Again, the brand can use their own carrier selections.
Yeah.
But then from a re-commerce perspective, they plug into our network or their own. Right, they can choose.
Yeah.
I've got clients that have 5 or 6 different re-commerce partners. They will want to bring them all in, or they can.
Yeah.
Because by grade or by average order value or by condition
determines where they're going to go.
Where it's going to go. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And so have you, in your journey, because it seems like, I know you were quite modest, but like in your journey, have you ever had a mentor or anyone that sort of like offered good guidance? And
several, several mentors. And I've always, I've stayed in touch with pretty much all of them, and learned good and bad, from those mentors. But there's been 3 or 4 individuals that have really like influenced my career and where I've gone, and I'm grateful for the experience, but also for what they've taught me, because it's meant I've been able to take risk, where a lot of people don't, and it's given me the confidence to go out there and talk to people and try and add value.
Yeah, the interesting thing with yourself is, like you said earlier, you've had this like 360, insight to the supply chain, and there might be people there that or listening that may be in this like slightly more rigid environment or role. Like what advice would you give them to say, put yourself out there to gain slightly more experience? Because I imagine at the time when you were slightly less 360, you probably didn't feel overly qualified, or what kind of advice would you give someone?
I think for me, for someone that's in e-commerce, I would really highly recommend they get into re-commerce at some stage and get into that space, albeit in their own company, but go and explore that space, because it's interesting. There's complexities around it, but you do learn how that market operates at a macro level and a micro level. But you got to be in it to understand it and learn it. You can't be outside looking in. So I'd highly recommend people on that side go in, and likewise and having come from the reverse space, going actually into primary e-commerce and working with brands directly and all of the operational logistics and supply chain and technology stacks that are needed to power this global engine. You need to experience it, So I think there's opportunities on both sides of that fence to do what I did, and I've not come across many that have done that. Just in the space, I know people that have stayed in the secondary market space. I know people that have stayed in the freight or the e-com space. None of them have like made that
sort of transition
over. Not many, And the what I will say is the re-commerce, that global network that's out there, they're building platforms to really, let's say, bring attention and awareness to it. And there's forums that exist, and there's some great like trade shows that exist globally around bringing the best people in e-commerce together. But actually, until you actually go in and work with an organization that are doing it, you don't know.
It's mind blowing, because you've got organizations like DHL, for example, like they've got your DHL Global Forwarding, DHL eCom, your DHL Express, and like even like I just know they don't always collab in the way you might think they do. They're just run as completely separate entities.
We've seen it within brands where you'll have P&L owners that own categories. You could have an organization where there's the senior director that owns menswear or women's wear or even home and living, but they don't work together on the overall challenge because they're focused on their own outbound. Versus how do we fix this whole reverse thing that's happening? And that's why organizations have, really big box retailers will have, outlet provisions in place. But again, they're slow, they're costly, they're expensive. You need people to resource them. It's not that there's any single right approach. You need a blended approach. But you've touched on a good point there. There isn't. I'd say there isn't full awareness at exec levels around what should be done here. And it ends up with merchandise teams, procurement teams, transformation teams. It's not standardized at all. It never has been.
I suppose that's when you then touch into more like your 4PL and just outsourcing the your entire sort of supply chain. Okay, and then I guess because the question I asked earlier, it was mainly because if you've come through, let's say, like quite a heavy sales driven route, you just strike me as someone who understands very in depth the ops and the tech side. So like speaking to a salesperson in the market, what do you do to go and get that? To get that experience, or because it almost seems counterintuitive. I'm a sales guy, but I go and
learn operations.
Like
supply
learn
chain.
ops,
100%. I mean, one of my, again, I don't, obviously, new business and sales has always been a core thing I've been focused on, but my sort of solutions design element came from what I did at the University of Nottingham, and I went through Lean Six Sigma, right? So when you go through Lean Six Sigma, you start to see the world
differently.
You just see it. You can never go back, right?
Yeah.
You go, you see a kettle and a toaster that's too far away from where the bread is, and you want to move it. Right. It changes your perspective on everything,
right?
Because you're reducing waste, and it's operational.
Yeah.
Right. It's operational. So those tools that I learned with, a chap called Mick Gash, I'll call his name out. He was Lean Six Sigma practitioner who just really, he liked me because I had an interest in what he was teaching in the university. But very quickly I adopted those tools, right? Those tools. And it's like, well, I can adopt those tools into this space.
Yeah.
And at that time it was re-commerce. But it did mean I could go and talk to a supply chain executive and confidently talk about operational design.
How things move and
Yeah. So it gives you that different perspective. So my advice there is someone working in re-commerce to go through supply chain operations and some form of Lean Six Sigma training means they change their perspective, but they understand operational flow.
How long does it take to get qualified? Or
there's different tiers to it. You can do it. There's different levels to it. You can do it within a year or so. It's not a lengthy process, but you got to absorb a lot of, and they're all things now. They're not, back in the day, the whole Kaizen thing came from, manufacturing in Japan, but the fundamental principles of it were adopted by the big corporations in Silicon Valley. That's what happened. And Intel and those brands, they're all born from Lean Six Sigma principles. That's where it came from. So it's how you scale, right? If you understand that and you cut out
all the noise and waste. Yeah.
And process improvement, it's always about continuous improvement.
Yeah.
That's probably where I got hooked into it. I got hooked into that continuous improvement element, and it's never left me. Always wanting to just incrementally improve and do a bit more. And with technology, that's what it's all about. It's about improving things.
I guess you can take a very pragmatic sort of viewpoint on pretty much anything. Like, have you ever applied it outside of industry, just in general life?
In home life.
I mean, I guess you mentioned the toaster and the bread, but
I suppose it gets you into you start to forecast things.
Yeah.
Like, you can forecast things because you can see the journey already. Like, not predicting what's going to happen, but by design, you're looking at those scenarios and you're like, I've got a feeling that's the way that's going to play out.
Yeah.
Because you can see the steps. And if I make a change here, it's going to go that way, type of thing. So, not in my work life, but in my personal development and and how I coordinate myself and my family and my friends and everything. It's just part of you like to be ahead of things. Yeah.
Got you. I'm going to touch on like the personal side of things. So like, was there any difficult periods, like, going through your career where like, you probably faced personal challenge and like, how did you handle it whilst going through quite a successful career?
There were probably a couple of moments. Obviously, I was at the University of Nottingham for around 8 years, and that's a great network, and you're in a little bit of a higher education bubble when you're there, because it's like a microclimate. You're just in that space. So going to Pies into the private sector was an eye opener, because it was just fast paced. It was just, compared to the public sector, it's very slow.
Yeah,
it's quite laborious. There's committees, and you can't make it. It takes a long time to make change, and that was like. It took me time to adapt to it. Sorry, but moving from Pies to BackTech was a big change, because I'd built that team. Right, I'd built a team of people. We had a P&L. We were responsible across the company, and we were managing growth. And you just got that infrastructure. Got an infrastructure of new business, of account managers, of marketing, of tech. Right, you've got all those things you've built. And then you go to effectively an international startup element of it, and it's you with your laptop.
Yeah.
So you've gone from building everything to I'm on my own, type of thing. And you weren't on your own. Obviously, you're working remotely, but that was a really good experience, you know. And I
sort of wake up moment.
It was, You build resilience because you're on your own, right? You know, you've got to make things happen. And Ben Whittaker at the time was fundamental, and Howard Rosenberg, who was the CEO and founder at BStock, and a chap called Eric Moriarty. Yeah,
he's
the SVP of sales, and they were critical in that me making that journey, because they're like, look, this isn't going to be easy.
Yeah,
this is going to be tough, right? But we're here, and it was just a good. Again, you get the scars, you go down these warrens and rabbit holes with people where they've got no intention of partnering with you, and you learn every time you do that.
Yeah,
it's another bit of credit, and so you have to get. I've got loads of scars. From playing football, but you get them professionally as well, you know. And that was a good moment of growth. And I'd say the third one from a career was going into Seco, where it was just, again, it was like the new kid on the block. You coming from enterprise re-commerce into enterprise e-com, and it's like, it's just you're just trying to absorb all the moving parts in a big global, like, multi-billion-dollar company. It's the biggest company I'd worked for, you know, in regards to annual revenues. So that was great, you know, great enterprise experience.
And I guess it seems like it developed that entrepreneurial sort of like spirit and puts you where you are now.
My business, you know, business partners like Dean Townsend and Mark Gross and Dave Emerson and Mark White as well, and Keith O'Brien. Those guys, they've always been a good example for me, because I've seen them, I've seen what they've done, and they've got form, and they've created value, and they've done it right. So you want to be part of that journey, and you want to be part of that team as well. And so I'm excited to work with them formally, you know, properly. And Dave and I go back a long time, and he knows it, right? He's a huge influence on me, but he is, I'd say, you know, particularly those guys, they're just entrepreneurs, you know, out and out. And you learn from them.
He mentioned something on his podcast that he did, and it was just being a part of the founding team. You don't want to be the guy that lets the team down, kind of thing, which can be pretty powerful. I guess
100%. You're all in it together, you know. And what I've learned from those guys is that, you know, I've got their back, they've got my back, and it's critical for business as well. Trust is so important.
Agreed.
And I trust them. I trust them with everything, you know, and I hope they trust me. You know, and we're going to deliver, and everyone, once the company grows and we go on that scale pathway we're on, everyone's going to be happy, you know, and that's the plan.
Love that. Well, if you were going to give advice to Giorgio Vitale way back, you know, before even the education side of things, what advice would you give yourself?
I should have worked on my left foot sooner, because I probably would have been a pro. I would have been a professional footballer.
Tidy footy player.
But no, what I'd say back is take the risk sooner. Probably sometimes held on too long in the same position, and should have made the transition. And talking about Mick Gash earlier, who was the Lean Six Sigma, himself and another guy called Mark Cooper, they were like, you need to get out there. Like, you need to get out there and experience stuff. You're too young, and you've got too much ahead of you to stay where you are. And that I should have probably done that a bit sooner, but it was the right time. You know, it was the right time. I was in my late 20s, and it was the right thing to do. So
amazing. Well, Giorgio, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing the insights.
Thank you for having me. No, it's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Amazing. Thanks.